25 years ago, Canada erupted in a debate about art. Politicians postured in the House of Commons, media frothed, and some outraged citizens even painted mock replicas of the work in question. It was all over Barnett Newman's Voice of Fire. Do you remember it? Was it great art? Was it a waste of taxpayers' money? Marc Mayer is the director of the National Gallery of Canada, and he's here to explain why Voice of Fire is still worth the Sturm und Drang that it had 25 years ago. Great to see you again.
Thanks. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, let us recall, for those who don't remember it, the tone of the debate 25 years ago. And we're going to start by reading a letter to the Ottawa Citizen from somebody named Sheila Herman. Here we go. Sheila writes, I think that Shirley Thompson, director of the National Gallery, should be hanging her head in shame. To think that she and her staff recently paid $1.8 million of our money for an abstract painting. First, I fail to see any beauty in a piece of canvas 18 feet high and 8 feet wide, consisting of 3 stripes. Secondly, it amazes me that such a grandiose amount of money is paid out for American art when we have so many talented Canadians. Last but not least, in the age of higher federal and provincial taxes and general belt tightening, why couldn't this $1.8 million be put towards reducing the national debt? Where is the logic? Okay. Let's start to unpack this and discuss. And let's start with the Philistine question. You paid $1.8 million for it back in the day. What do you think it's worth today?
Well, we don't like talking about the value of art, but my best guess, when people ask me that, is about $40 million, given what I know about his market. But a recent article...
Did you say 40? 40?
Yes, $40 million. A recent article in the Ottawa Citizen, I think, brought that number more realistically up to $80 million. So somewhere between those two numbers, it's an extremely valuable
So if you were just being a crass investor, we done okay with this?
Brilliant investment.
How would you answer Sheila's final question, though, which is, where is the logic behind the purchase of this painting?
Well, we have a National Gallery, and we want a National Gallery, and we can't just sort of cherry pick where we don't think our money should be going because we prefer this problem to solve. We're trying to solve all our problems, and we're trying to have a whole country. And having a whole country requires us to have cultural facilities that are fundamental to who we are and what we need.
Okay, but that doesn't explain why it was worth buying that particular painting.
That painting was shown in Canada at the U.S. Pavilion. It had this great Canadian provenance. It was how the Americans wanted to represent themselves to the world in 1967, and they brought it to Canada. So that was the one connection. And Barnett Newman comes from a long line of very, very important artists. He's not somebody that we invented. He was already quite famous and highly regarded among art lovers, and that is his tallest painting. And really one of his most extraordinary works, if you understand a little bit about Barnett Newman and who he was and what he was getting at. I get goosebumps when I see it, and I'm terribly proud. I had nothing to do with acquiring it, but I'm very, very proud to be the person who's the steward of that painting.
Charlie Pachter, well-known Canadian painter, had this to say at the time regarding the fact that Barnett Newman was an American. He said, since little produced in a cultural colony can acquire the enhanced reputation of work produced at the centers of empire, formerly France, now New York, the colony must acquire reputable art, this is called building a collection, that brings it international prestige, which is, according to some, unavailable at home. It gets to the issue of whether or not, if we've got money to spend, we ought not to spend it on Canadians. What do you say to that?
We spend an awful lot of money on Canadians. We have the largest collection of Canadian art in the country. And we're very avid about that Canadian collection, but we're also not anti-American. And we're not anti any other country. We have an international program and always have. And I just find that just a little bit jingoistic, frankly. You want to have great examples of great art from the whole planet. And that's for Canadian artists as well as for Canadians, for them to see what their art looks like in the context of what's considered great outside of Canada. That's extremely useful, and it raises the bar for Canadians at home.
As you say, you continue to buy American art at the National Gallery. You have other Barnett Newman paintings, in fact. Yellow Edge is another one. It was, I gather, gifted as opposed to purchased. Had it been purchased, do you think we would be undergoing a similar debate over the advisability of doing that?
Well, Shirley Thompson, who is one of the most courageous people I've ever met, didn't buy that picture, but she bought a Mark Rothko, and that's a blurry blob, if you want to call the other one a stripe. And the controversy started up all over again.
Well, that was also 1.8 million, wasn't it?
That was actually more. It was 2 point something is what she paid for that one. And it looked like the controversy was going to start all over again, and people just sort of, I think, got tired out. But no, that Yellow Edge picture was a gift from Barnett Newman's widow because of the commitment that the National Gallery has made to his work. We have 3 paintings and a very important sculpture. Yellow Edge, by the way, is a very helpful painting for people who have a hard time understanding why Barnett Newman is meaningful.
There it is.
It was, she told us that she thought it might be his last painting, and Yellow Edge is her title. He died before giving it a title. And he died within a couple of years of painting it. It's a black rectangle. It's quite large. It's maybe 6 feet high. And then this thin but bright Hansa yellow bar at the edge. He called these zips, by the way. They weren't stripes. He said stripes is what I've got here, stripes. He called them zips. And this is a picture of what it feels like to die. He knows he's dying, and the light that is him, and these zips, by the way, represent us. We're the vertical mammal. Everything about us is vertical. Our aspirations, our churches, our skyscrapers. We get to Europe by going 30,000 feet up first. And we're standing vertically in front of these things. That is him being forced off screen. That's what it's like to die. I don't make fun of things like that because I don't know of another picture in all of art history, despite the fact that he wasn't particularly skilled. There's some bleeding in there through the masking tape that he used. I can't think of another picture in art history that so movingly expresses what it feels like to die.
Stephen Godfrey, late critic from the Globe and Mail, wrote the following. He said the historical value of the Barnett Newman painting as a statement about form and color, when pictorial content itself was being severely questioned, requires some explanation. Not to make that effort, not to present the artistic value of this expenditure in the context it deserves, at the time when the budget pressures, the goods and services tax, the problem of fisheries, other financial issues are preoccupying Canadians, is an insensitivity to the very key power which the gallery has been given. Mm-hmm. The suggestion here is that the gallery sort of dropped the ball by not adequately explaining why this was important. Is that a fair criticism?
It is a fair criticism, and I think that the people whose job it was to explain it at the time would have to agree. But the fellow whose job it was Bryden Smith, one of the most brilliant and much beloved of our former colleagues, was literally a deer caught in the headlights. He's seeing all of this. He was getting death threats, all this hatred across the country. I mean, he's become a pariah, and now he's being asked to defend himself. Well, that's sort of above his pay grade in a way. Was overwhelmed by this and was sort of made numb by it. And I hope I'm never in his position. But yes, you can defend these things by saying, you know, for a century and a half, artists have been eliminating all of the unnecessary elements that a picture needs in order to communicate emotionally. And we had come to that, and that wasn't the end of the line. Barnett Newman gives us a little hint of what the end of the line is, and that's a monochrome painting. It took us several generations to get there, and once we got there, people started saying, well, painting is dead. We've exhausted all the variations. And so they did need to do that work, but it's work that requires you to pay attention and to listen, and people don't listen when they've made up their minds.
Have you ever met Felix Holtmann?
No.
Okay, so for those who forget who Felix Holtmann was, I mean, one of the reasons...
I haven't forgotten.
You haven't forgotten who he is, I'm sure. Felix Holtmann was a farmer from Manitoba who happened to be the chair of the, I think, Communications and Culture Committee of Parliament of the House of Commons. And I think he said at the time, this is the Conservative government of Brian Mulroney, and I think he said at the time he could do Barnett Newman's Voice of Fire with 2 cans of paint and a couple of rollers. He was not impressed. How would you attempt to convince the Felix Holtmanns of the world that they're just wrong about this painting?
Well, first of all, I would agree with him that, and say that I would have recommended to Barnett Newman that he hire a kid to make it because he was not well and getting on in age, because the point was not the how it was made, it was the what, it was the meaning of the picture. And this is a man who lived through the Second World War, was absolutely transformed by this event that was the signal event of his generation. And his reaction to that, remembering this is probably one of the best educated, most articulate of the artists from his generation. He had a degree in philosophy. He published more than all of the abstract expressionists put together. He was a deep thinker, and he was convinced that what got us to the Second World War, to the Holocaust, and all of that horror was that somehow the Western tradition in art has to have some kind of blame for this. And we need to cut ourselves off from it, and artists need to get back to fundamental responsibilities. And for him, it was thinking about the sacred and creating a situation where a person standing in front of a painting can feel his presence and can feel his humanity in the most basic, most unencumbered by any kind of codes or symbols, most basic way he can, the simplest way he can. He was absolutely sincere and authentic. This is not a con job. This is not a joke. This is someone who was very, very enamored with the tradition of the Kabbalah. He was not a religious man, but he was very interested in spirituality going back centuries and wanted to contribute in a meaningful way after all of that horror, contribute something positive.
Do you have to have an appreciation for all of that, though, in order to like the painting?
You have to understand the Catholic rite to understand a big, large section of art history. You've always got to have a little bit of background. There aren't very many paintings or sculptures or even TV shows, for that matter, that don't require you to have a little basic knowledge about the culture that's being discussed or that's being exemplified. So yeah, you do have to have a little bit of background, and we don't get that in school. We learn about novels, but we don't learn about paintings.
We have a bit of background, I would suggest, when it comes to Impressionists. We love the Impressionists. Everybody loves the Impressionists. We're going to let's put these up if we can, Sheldon. We've got some images from the Musée de l'Orangerie, I hope I'm saying that correctly, in Paris. Now, there we go. Had the National Gallery bought an Impressionist painting for $2 million instead of the Barnett Newman Voice of Fire for almost that much money, do you think there would have been a similar outcry?
No, but we didn't need any. We already have Impressionist paintings, and we bought them many, many, many years before we bought the Barnett Newman, and got them for a good price. It might have been expensive at the time, but they're risibly cheap by today's standards for what they cost. But I think at the time, perfect example, Tom Thomson, much beloved. My predecessor, Eric Brown, was hauled in front of a parliamentary committee, just like Shirley Thompson with the Voice of Fire, to explain why he was wasting the taxpayers' dollars on the artless smears of a Mr. Tom Thomson of Owen Sound, Ontario.
When did that happen?
This happened in 1917, I think. And that was a Liberal member of Parliament, thank you very much, for those who have preconceived ideas about these things. And yeah, so we are the scandal center of Canada. But what I find amusing is that Americans get very, very upset about religious subject matter in their art. But the difference between Americans and Canadians is Canadians get very, very upset about stripes.
Why do you think Impressionism is so easy on the eyes for us as opposed to other kinds of art?
Well, it seems pretty today, and the Impressionists, of course, are contributed to creating our sensibility. They're peaceful, they're lovely. At the time, they were considered perfectly hideous and artless and skillless and dumb. They were not popular artists for the first part of their careers. Of course, I think that Monet, for example, died a wealthy man and much beloved. But it took them a long, long time to develop an audience. They were considered not particularly talented.
So with much of this stuff, I think of Nathan Phillips Square in downtown Toronto, with Henry Moore's The Archer, which everybody at the time hated and thought was a waste of money, and now today nobody thinks twice about because it's accepted. We just have to wait. We have to wait a bit, don't we, when it comes to art? You can wait a bit, or the people whose job it is to help you understand need to calm down and stop being so defensive and just try to find ways to help people understand. You're always going to find people who think we should not be spending our tax dollars on art, whether it's Canadian art at all. And in that letter that you wrote, of course, it was because it was an abstract painting that upset her so much. And then number two, it's an American painting that upset her so much. And then number three is that it's a stripe. Yes. There's a lot of work, and the schools could help. We're going to show you a bit of an unusual map now. This is a map from eBay, and it shows the most searched for artists in the United States, state by state. I think if we look at Pennsylvania, we can sort of see Andy Warhol is very popular in his home state. If you look on the west, Frida Kahlo, popular in California, Marc Chagall in Virginia for some particular reason, Pablo Picasso in Arkansas, Terry Redlin, Thomas Kinkade, popular in multiple states. Let's do a sample of a painting by Kinkade. Some estimate that 1 out of every 20 U.S. homes has a Kincaid image. That's pretty amazing. Now, that's as far as you can get from Voice of Fire, right? That picture
I will agree with you
by
there.
Kincaid, that's a long way from Voice of Fire. How do you regard the distance between these two, what seem to be very different aesthetic universes?
Well, one guy's a philosopher and the other's a commercial illustrator, essentially. They're not the same category. I mean, it's all art. I won't say it's not art, because I don't believe in this business of is it art? It's all art. I just don't think it's any good.
If you own a Kincaid in your home, are you likely to get Voice of Fire?
Depends who you are. Depends how open you are to new ideas, and maybe. I don't think I don't think it's impossible. I've seen people change their minds about Voice of Fire when they just walk in the room and see it, because it's this big in the newspaper, but it's 5 meters high. It's a big painting. I think it's possible for anyone to come around as long as they just park their anger and park their preconceived ideas for long enough to listen to people a little bit, and then they might just start their preconceived ideas start to erode. They might not like Kincaid after that, or they might continue to like, and that's also fair. Anything's possible with human beings.
I must confess, the first time I saw it, which would have been about 25 years ago, you've got it, I think, placed in such a way so that you can turn a corner and then it's there.
Right.
And it's big and it's very striking. And it does make a very dramatic statement. You can come in from the right-hand side of that picture and you turn the corner and you look at it, it does make a statement. But tell me, over the last 25 years, as you listen to sort of the buzz of people talking about it when they're looking at it, what kind of stuff do you hear? What do people say?
Oh, there's a little kid said, oh, it's a couple peas short of a casserole, really. All kinds of crazy things. I think the first thing that happens, is quite fascinating, is that people tend to just sort of shut up when they see it for the first time. Because they've got to take it all in. And that, of course, was exactly what Barnett Newman wanted to have happen. He wanted it to sort of surprise you by its scale and by its simplicity. And it's also an aggressive painting. That's an aggressive, those are two aggressive colors, of the blue on either side of the red. So people tend to just be very quiet, even if they're very angry about it, because they're so surprised by what it physically feels like to be in front of it.
Gotcha. I want to ask this question about you, and I don't want anybody to read into this question anything pejorative. You're from Sudbury, Ontario.
That's right.
How does a guy from Sudbury, Ontario become such an art connoisseur as you are?
Well, aesthetes and art lovers just crop up like mushrooms all over our planet.
They do.
And yes, a guy like me can even come from Sudbury.
But did your
And
parents
there were
love
plenty
art?
of us. No, I didn't come from a particularly artistic family. My father was an actor, and he and I talked about acting a lot, and film and theater and directors and writers. We didn't talk about art because he was not interested in the least, but it was a passion of mine.
Where'd you get it from?
I had an uncle who had an art gallery in the basement of his Army-Navy surplus store. The Army-Navy surplus store paid the bills, and he was my father's cousin and my mother's brother-in-law, and a very close friend of the family, so I saw him a lot, and he was a Sunday painter, and he encouraged me. He realized that it was something that I was interested in as a child, and he always encouraged me. So it did come from the family, but just not the immediate family.
And you've ended up running 2 galleries in New York State, and now the biggest one in Canada, the most important one in Canada, so it's been a good run.
It's been a great run. I'm proud of myself, and so are they.
Good. All right, so here comes my next high and tight fastball. You ready? You no doubt get accused from time to time of running an elitist, white, establishment, institution in Canada that doesn't pay adequate homage to, let's call them racialized minorities, which is, I believe, the expression that people use nowadays. You're too interested in finding favor with the rich and comfortable at the expense of everybody else. When you hear that, what do you say?
Well, it makes me feel sad. First of all, we don't put pictures of the artists next to their paintings so you can see what color they are. We do write their name down and tell you where they're born, but a lot of people are born in places where they didn't actually spend most of their lives. We are very active acquirers of contemporary art all over the world. We buy in India, we buy in North Africa, we buy in China. We don't buy in those places, but we buy works by artists from those places. I think that would have been fair a long time ago. It's no longer fair today. And on the question of elitism, this is one that I don't really know where people are getting at. Excellence is what you expect from all of your institutions, especially public institutions that are paid for by public funds. We presume and hope for, although we don't call it elitism, but that's really what it is. In our hospitals, you wouldn't want a half-educated surgeon coming at you with a scalpel, now would you? Why do you have different standards for art museums?
What's the answer to that?
The answer is don't have different standards for art museums than you have for other
But
institutions.
we do. Why do we?
I don't know. The people who love art and are passionate about, of course, don't have those standards. And I like to think that a lot of them are very proud of what we're doing with our National Gallery. And with
But
our
it's the
acquisitions.
easiest political pandering job out there to take a poke at an institution like yours.
We're pretty vulnerable, that's true. And we probably should do, or could do, a better job. I pride myself in certainly wanting to do a better job, and I try to. I speak plainly. I don't use jargon.
Dans les deux langues, n'est-ce pas?
Dans les deux langues officielles, bien sûr. C'est non seulement ma responsabilité, mais mon plaisir quotidien. The other thing is that I love this stuff so much. I want to share my pleasure with art. I don't come from the milieu of the people that you're accusing me of catering.
I am not accusing.
Excuse
I am
me.
asking.
That one is. Yes, you weren't accusing me of anything. I'm sorry. So no, I am a man of the people, and I think that as many people as possible should get the kind of rushes that I get on a daily basis from art.
Let's get a sense about how you can do that. What's your annual acquisition budget for the gallery?
It's $8 million.
And how far does that go nowadays?
It goes pretty far. It goes a lot farther than people who read newspapers and see that paintings are selling for $250 million. And sculptures for increasingly similar amounts. Of course, we can't backfill. We don't have a Manet in Canada. We've got 5 Monets hanging currently at the National Gallery, but we don't have a Manet, I think, in the whole country. Manet is probably the most influential painter of the 19th century on Canadian painters. So it really behooves us to get a Manet, but what do they start at $20 million? So
that's
we're not likely to get one anytime soon unless someone gives us one.
What if, though, there's every likelihood that this current Liberal government of Canada is going to go deeply into deficit in order to try to prime the pump that is our economy right now. And what if they were to come to you and say, you know what, we want to up your budget for acquisitions next year from $8 million, which you've had, to let's say 20. Mm-hmm. Do you think the public would accept that?
I don't know. I mean, I'd like to see. I'll certainly certainly defend the government's decision if they take that one. Yeah. I don't think that's likely, but who knows? You never know. It's not my first priority, however, because we're doing very well with gifts. We're very, very actively soliciting gifts from Canadians and Americans, and we work really hard. We're also very interested in finding those artists from the past who have been neglected by the market, but who are absolutely guaranteed a place in art history because you're buying bargains there and you're getting them ahead of your colleagues because you're very smart about your art history. That's a game that I get very excited about. And it doesn't require that much money. That'll be $1 or $2 million as opposed to the 20, 30, or 40, or 50, or 100, God knows where. So yes, the more money, the better, obviously. But we do pretty good with our $8 million, I got to say.
Okay, let's finish on this. An admittedly bizarre question, which will require you to dig down deep into your artistic soul and put yourself in the place of the art that you collect. Does art care if it's held in a public institution or in a private home?
Art is an inanimate object that has no feelings, so it doesn't care. But I know that you're saying that rhetorically. Mm-hmm. I care that the public has access to the most extraordinary works of art, the ones that have defined us, that have helped us create our world and imagine beauty and understand ourselves better through art. Artists are trying to understand themselves better through art. That's one of the things they do. I think those things, as many of those first-rate things, should be in public collections, and I don't know a lot of people who disagree with me. And let the secondary things be in the private hands, but let the primary things be available to all of us. I'm very much in favor of that.
I don't mind saying the National Gallery has a fabulous collection in a fabulous building. The building itself is a work of art, isn't it?
It is absolutely a work of art.
Yeah.
We call it our paradise.
And it is. So if you get a chance to go to Ottawa and you haven't seen it yet, you should. Marc Mayer, always good to see a Northern Ontario boy do good. Well done. Thanks for visiting us at TVO tonight.
Thank you, Steve.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.